Level 1. The Dawn of Myth. First human stories. Long before cities, empires, or writing existed, humans confronted the mysteries of existence with imagination as their tool. Picture a small tribe in Paleolithic Europe, shadows flickering on cave walls, night pressing close. A wolf's howl piercing the darkness. They witnessed fire, storms, and celestial lights, events they could not explain. In that uncertainty, the first myths were born. Stories told around fires to make sense of danger and mystery. Early humans personified forces of nature, attributing agency and intention to the sun, moon, storms, and rivers. Anthropologists studying cave art in Lascaux, France, and Altamira, Spain, see recurring images of bulls, deer, and abstract symbols. Visual storytelling representing the subconscious fears and hopes of early humans. These myths were survival tools, telling stories about spirits guarding the forest or gods controlling the sky gave humans a sense of control, a narrative framework that reduced fear and guided behavior. They also encoded communal memory. Hunters learned which animals were sacred or dangerous, which rivers were safe to cross, and which lands were cursed. The earliest myths were therefore both imaginative and practical, weaving together morality, survival, and curiosity, establishing a foundation that would grow into complex pantheons and epic tales across civilizations. Level 2. Gods of nature, sky, sun, and earth. As humans transitioned from wandering hunters to settled agricultural societies, myths became the language of natural order and survival. They no longer only feared beasts, they sought to understand and influence the very forces that governed crops, rainfall, and seasons. The Egyptians worshipped Ra, the sun god, imagining him journeying across the sky in a fiery boat, vanquishing darkness each day. In Mesopotamia, Enlil unleashed storms, while Anu controlled the heavens, their whims directly impacting the lives of farmers and city dwellers. Ancient Chinese myths credited Pangu with separating heaven and earth, while indigenous cultures in Africa and the Americas revered rivers, mountains, and winds as living entities capable of blessing or punishing humans. These stories were not idle fantasies. They provided humans with rituals and moral codes to survive unpredictable environments. By narrating gods as custodians of the sky, the sun, and the earth, myths framed the world as comprehensible, actionable, and morally significant. They invited humans to participate in cosmic balance, offering offerings, prayers, and festivals to ensure harmony, blending fear, reverence, and hope into one continuous narrative of survival and meaning. Level 3. Monsters and beasts. Fear in early tales. Where there are gods, there are monsters, manifestations of chaos, danger, and the unknown. Mesopotamian epics tell of Humbaba guarding the cedar forest and Tiamat, the chaos dragon, threatening to consume creation itself. Greek myths introduce the Minotaur, a human-bull hybrid, dwelling in a labyrinth and consuming sacrificial youths. Norse legends feature Fenrir, a monstrous wolf destined to devour the gods during Ragnarok. These creatures externalize human fears, creating safe spaces to confront the unthinkable. They represent natural disasters, moral failings, or the unpredictable fury of life, teaching early humans courage, strategy, and resilience. Anthropologists suggest that these mythic monsters were coded warnings. A river that floods, a predator that stalks, or a rival tribe ready to attack. By imagining and narrating these threats, humans rehearsed responses to danger, transforming terror into structured stories that educated, warned, and entertained. Monsters in myths are more than fiction. They are projections of our deepest anxieties, preserved across centuries, shaping both psychology and culture. Level 4. Heroes arise, the first epic figures. With monsters came heroes, individuals whose courage, intelligence, or moral fortitude allowed them to confront and overcome danger. Gilgamesh, the Sumerian king, journeys through a world filled with demons, divine challenges, and existential questions, seeking immortality and meaning. Hercules undertakes 12 labors, each representing impossible challenges that test both strength and character. Egyptian myths describe Osiris navigating death and resurrection, teaching justice and morality. Heroes are reflections of societal ideals. They embody bravery, honor, and wisdom while showing the consequences of hubris. They also serve as vicarious experiences, allowing listeners to confront fear and moral dilemmas safely. In early societies, these heroes were more than entertainment. They were models, teaching critical thinking, strategy, and ethical behavior while reinforcing communal norms. The hero's journey, repeated in countless myths worldwide, is an early exercise in psychological development, moral reasoning, and imagination. Level 5. Creation Stories: How the World Began. Every culture seeks to explain its origins, and creation myths offer answers to life's most fundamental questions. Babylonian texts describe Marduk defeating Tiamat, splitting her body to create earth and sky. In Norse myth, the giant Ymir's corpse becomes mountains, seas, and sky, a literal embodiment of life arising from death. Hindu cosmology tells of Brahma shaping the universe from the cosmic ocean, emphasizing cycles of creation and destruction. Even tribal myths narrate animals and spirits forming landscapes, rivers, and celestial bodies. Creation myths serve multiple purposes. They alleviate existential anxiety, establish moral order, and validate cultural practices. They also encode scientific observations. The sun rises and sets, rivers flow, and seasons change, all interpreted as acts of gods or spirits. By explaining the inexplicable, creation myths provide humans with narrative control over chaos, embedding lessons, ethical frameworks, and awe into foundational stories. Level 6. Flood Myths: Water as Purifier and Threat. Flood myths are ubiquitous, spanning cultures and continents. The Mesopotamian tale of Utnapishtim mirrors the biblical story of Noah, where a god floods the earth to cleanse corruption. Hindu texts recount Manu surviving the flood with divine guidance. These myths reflect both environmental events. Archaeological evidence shows major floods in ancient Mesopotamia, and moral lessons: obedience, humility, and resilience. Water symbolizes destruction and rebirth, a powerful duality reinforcing the idea that chaos can be a source of renewal. Flood myths also encode social memory. By warning against hubris, overconsumption, or moral failure, they teach communities about survival, ethics, and adaptation. In each narrative, humans navigate divine wrath and natural disaster, highlighting the interplay between morality, fate, and human ingenuity. Level 7. Underworld Journeys: Death and Afterlife. Death is the ultimate unknown, and myths seek to explain, confront, and domesticate it. Egyptian texts guide souls through perilous trials in the Duat, emphasizing moral choices and cosmic justice. Greek Orpheus descends into Hades to reclaim Eurydice, exploring love, courage, and human limitations. Norse myths describe hell, the underworld ruled by a goddess, where souls await final judgment during Ragnarok. Underworld myths provide psychological relief. They offer narrative control over mortality, outline moral consequences, and provide hope for continuity or rebirth. They also reinforce social norms, teaching respect for elders, ancestors, and ethical behavior. By embedding death in story, humans create meaning from fear, allowing civilizations to cope with inevitable mortality through structured narrative and ritual. Level 8. Tricksters and Clever Fools: Chaos and Humor. Not all myths are solemn. Trickster figures like Loki, Anansi, and Coyote introduce chaos, humor, and ingenuity. These figures defy authority, manipulate circumstances, and reveal hidden truths through mischief. In African folklore, Anansi uses cleverness to outwit stronger opponents, teaching lessons about wit, creativity, and moral flexibility. Norse Loki alternates between causing calamity and aiding gods, reflecting the unpredictable nature of life and the necessity of adaptability. Tricksters embody human intelligence, cunning, and the acceptance of unpredictability. They teach critical thinking, challenge rigid norms, and demonstrate that order and chaos are in constant interplay. Humor and subversion in myth serve as both entertainment and cognitive exercise, preparing humans for complex social realities. Level 9, divine love and conflict, gods interacting. The gods themselves mirror human complexities: love, jealousy, betrayal, and alliance. Greek myths tell of Zeus's amorous exploits and Hera's vengeful responses, while Hindu tales depict Krishna's divine play, teaching devotion and moral subtleties. Myths of divine relationships function as allegories for human interaction, showing the consequences of actions, the tension between desire and duty, and the importance of balance. They offer moral reflection through dramatized storytelling, emphasizing lessons in strategy, empathy, and foresight. In Mesopotamia, Sumerian gods quarreled, intervened in human affairs, and sometimes punished mortals, reinforcing societal norms and divine authority. By studying these divine conflicts, humans learn critical lessons about power, ethics, and emotional intelligence. Level 10, Pantheons and Families, Structured Divinity. By level 10, myths organize the divine into families, hierarchies, and systems. Greek, Egyptian, Norse, and Hindu pantheons all show gods with relationships, roles, and responsibilities. These structured divinities explain natural phenomena, human behavior, and societal rules in comprehensible ways. They provide continuity. Children learn the stories, elders interpret meaning, and communities align rituals with divine expectations. Family dynamics among gods mirror human concerns: succession, inheritance, rivalry, and loyalty. Structured divinity also creates fertile ground for epic storytelling, philosophical reflection, and moral reasoning. Through these myths, humans link personal experience to cosmic order, finding meaning in social structure, morality, and the universe itself. Level 11. Cosmic Battles, Order versus Chaos. Across civilizations, myths portray the universe as a battleground between order and chaos. In ancient Mesopotamia, the god Marduk slays Tiamat, the primordial chaos dragon, using her divided body to create heaven and earth, rivers and mountains. This act is more than divine heroism. It reflects human attempts to impose structure on the unpredictable forces of nature and society. In Greek myth, the Titanomachy recounts Zeus leading the Olympians against the Titans, overthrowing a chaotic order to establish a structured pantheon. These cosmic battles parallel human conflicts: survival against hostile environments, community formation, and moral dilemmas. For example, the floods and storms recorded in Mesopotamian history mirrored the narrative chaos, embedding natural observation into myth. By dramatizing these struggles, myths not only entertain but also teach resilience, strategy, and moral discernment. They allow humans to conceptualize forces beyond their control, offering frameworks for understanding political upheaval, natural disasters, and existential uncertainty. Through these epic confrontations, ancient peoples explored the necessity of balance, the consequences of hubris, and the eternal tension between destruction and creation. Level 12, Sacred Laws, Myths become social codes. As societies stabilized, myths evolved into systems of law and ethics, merging divine authority with governance. Hammurabi's code, inscribed in Babylon around 1754 BCE, explicitly claims divine sanction, linking justice with the will of gods. Egyptians practiced ma'at, a principle of cosmic and social order, ensuring that pharaohs' decrees reflected balance, fairness, and harmony. In Vedic India, Dharma codified conduct and morality, framing ethical behavior as aligned with cosmic order. These myth-based laws taught that morality was inseparable from survival. Dishonesty, greed, and hubris attracted divine retribution, reflecting both spiritual and social consequences. Myths as law also reinforced power structures, legitimizing rulers while embedding societal norms in memorable narratives. By dramatizing crime, punishment, and reward through story, myths provided a psychological framework for behavior, education, and governance, ensuring cultural continuity across generations while maintaining societal cohesion. Level 13. Festivals and Rituals, Bringing Myths to Life. Stories alone could not satisfy the human need for experience. Myths were enacted through festivals, ceremonies, and communal rites, turning narrative into lived reality. The Dionysia in ancient Greece celebrated Dionysus with theatre, music, and masked performance, dramatizing themes of ecstasy, mortality, and divine influence. Egyptian festivals, like the Opet festival in Thebes, involved grand processions where pharaohs symbolically united with gods, reaffirming cosmic and political order. Indigenous American ceremonies often reenacted mythic creation events, blending storytelling with spiritual practice. Rituals functioned as immersive learning. Participants experienced the consequences of mythic actions firsthand, internalizing moral, spiritual, and cultural lessons. Such practices reinforced communal identity, ensured emotional engagement, and provided a tangible connection between human action and divine influence. Through performance, myths transcended oral tradition, embedding themselves into the psychology, memory, and morality of communities. Level 14. Mythical kings, power and divine right. Kings and rulers were often cast as semi-divine figures, linking political authority with myth. Gilgamesh, the Sumerian king of Uruk, exemplified this duality. Two-thirds god, one-third human, undertaking perilous quests that explored mortality, responsibility, and leadership. Egyptian pharaohs were living embodiments of gods. Their decrees were extensions of Ma'at, binding spiritual and social order. In China, emperors claimed the mandate of heaven, a divine endorsement contingent on just governance, echoing the narrative logic of mythic kingship. These stories reinforced the idea that authority was both sacred and accountable. Power required wisdom, ethical behavior, and courage. Misrule could bring famine, revolt, or divine wrath, illustrated dramatically through mythic narratives. By portraying kings as both powerful and fallible, myths educated subjects and rulers alike, teaching strategic thinking, moral responsibility, and leadership while dramatizing the consequences of hubris or injustice. Level 15. Transformation tales, shape-shifting, and magic. Myths often explore transformation, illustrating fluidity between human, animal, and divine forms. Greek tales, such as Daphne turning into a laurel tree to escape Apollo, dramatize both punishment and protection, desire and consequence. Norse Loki's shape-shifting demonstrates cunning, adaptation, and the duality of chaos and order. Many African and Native American myths feature animal-human hybrids or magical metamorphoses, representing spiritual insight, cunning, and moral lessons. Transformation myths reflect psychological realities. Identity is fluid, actions have consequences, and change is inherent to life. They also mirror ritual practices, such as shamans entering trance states or vision quests to interact with divine or ancestral spirits. These narratives serve as allegories for resilience, adaptation, and moral reasoning, teaching audiences that evolution, physical, spiritual, and societal, is essential for survival and enlightenment. Level 16. Nature spirits, trees, rivers, and mountains. While major gods governed the cosmos, local spirits inhabited landscapes, making nature itself sacred. Celtic traditions revered groves and sacred springs, believing spirits protected land and community. Japanese Shinto recognized kami in rivers, mountains, and stones, emphasizing respect and ritualized engagement with the environment. African and Polynesian myths similarly animate trees, rocks, and streams, linking morality, survival, and spirituality. Violating sacred spaces could invite illness, misfortune, or divine punishment, illustrating the practical wisdom encoded in myth. Beyond morality, these tales embed ecological understanding, teaching sustainable interaction with resources and reverence for life. Nature spirits also serve as moral mirrors. They reward prudence, caution, and humility while punishing arrogance, reinforcing societal and psychological lessons through narrative embodiment. Level 17. Sun and Moon. Deities, day and night cycles. Celestial bodies are central to myth, representing life, death, and the passage of time. Egyptian Ra traverses the sky daily and descends into the underworld by night, embodying renewal, mortality, and vigilance. In Norse legend, Skoll and Hati, wolves that chase the sun and moon, threaten cosmic stability, symbolizing natural cycles and human anxiety. Hindu Surya and Chandra personify day and night, emphasizing moral and spiritual balance. By dramatizing celestial movement, myths encode astronomy, agriculture, and ethical reflection. Humans learn to respect cycles, prepare for hardships, and celebrate renewal. These stories connect observation of natural patterns with emotional and existential contemplation, blending practical knowledge, philosophical insight, and spiritual awareness in compelling narrative form. Level 18. The Sea and Water Gods, Life and Danger. The oceans, rivers, and lakes are both life-giving and threatening. Poseidon rules storms, earthquakes, and seas, capable of both destruction and favor. Polynesian Tangaroa governs oceans, teaching reverence for the vast unknown. Water myths are grounded in survival. Communities depended on navigable rivers, bountiful fisheries, and predictable monsoons, yet faced shipwrecks, floods, and tsunamis. Water as divine entity dramatizes the tension between sustenance and peril, teaching caution, respect, and ingenuity. Psychologically, water embodies the subconscious, emotion, and potential chaos, creating rich symbolic layers that challenge the dreamer, sailor, or listener to navigate both literal and metaphorical currents. Level 19. Animal Symbolism, Totems and Omens. Animals are moral, spiritual, and practical guides. Egyptian bastet protected households and symbolized fertility, while eagles in Greco-Roman culture represented strength and divine insight. Native American totems encode lessons. Wolves teach cooperation, bears courage, ravens cunning. Omens and sightings of animals offered predictions and warnings, blending observation with spirituality. These myths are didactic. They teach humans to interpret patterns, respect nature, and internalize moral frameworks. Animal narratives also illustrate cultural identity and survival wisdom, connecting human communities to the natural world through enduring symbolic storytelling. Level 20. The First Oracles, Prophecy and Fate. Prophecy bridges knowledge, fear, and choice. Delphi's Pythia delivered Apollo's cryptic messages to Greek city-states, influencing decisions from war to colonization. Sumerian priests read livers and celestial signs seeking divine guidance. Hindu seers predicted dharmic cycles, emphasizing moral responsibility. Oracles dramatize the tension between free will and destiny, knowing the future can be both enlightening and dangerous. Myths featuring prophecy often involve irony, tragedy, or moral dilemma, such as Oedipus, whose knowledge of fate leads to unavoidable consequence. These narratives challenge critical thinking, ethical reflection, and strategic reasoning, teaching audiences that insight requires interpretation, courage, and humility in the face of uncertainty. Level 21. The Architecture of Myth, Sacred Spaces and Cities. By this stage in human civilization, myths began shaping not only imagination, but also the physical world. Sacred temples, ziggurats, and pyramids were built to honor gods, enacting myth in stone. The Sumerian ziggurats of Ur symbolized a bridge between heaven and earth, a literal axis mundi connecting humans to divine forces. In ancient Egypt, the pyramids served not only as tombs, but as embodiments of creation myths, aligning with stars and reflecting the pharaoh's journey to the afterlife. Greek temples, with their intricate columns and sculptures, depicted the pantheon in stone, making myth tangible and experiential. These structures were educational tools, architectural storytelling, and moral instruction embedded into society. They codified cultural memory, recorded religious doctrine, and imposed order on chaotic human life. For citizens and visitors, sacred architecture became a visceral experience. One could walk through myth, witness divine narratives, and feel the power and authority of stories shaping everyday life. Myths were no longer confined to tales. They were lived, performed, and built, teaching humans how imagination could shape reality, inspire awe, and preserve collective identity. Level 22. The Symbolic Tapestry, Signs, Dreams, and Omens. Symbols in myth transcended mere decoration. They were encoded wisdom. Rivers, mountains, serpents, and birds carried multiple meanings, shifting according to context. A serpent could signify danger, wisdom, or transformation, as seen in Mesopotamian myths, or the Ouroboros symbol in later Greek thought. In China, the dragon symbolized imperial power and cosmic authority, while in Mesoamerica, Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, embodied both creation and duality. These symbols functioned as cognitive tools, enabling societies to compress complex ideas into memorable forms. Dreams amplified symbolism. Egyptians interpreted nightly visions for guidance, while Greek dream interpreters advised generals and citizens on future events. Symbolism also transmitted cultural values. Courage, respect, and social hierarchy were encoded in animal behavior, celestial events, and divine interaction. Recognizing patterns and decoding meaning trained critical thinking, strategic foresight, and moral reasoning. Mythic symbols bridged imagination and experience, weaving a tapestry where morality, survival, and philosophy were inseparable. Level 23, the emotional river. Feelings in mythic narrative. At this level, myths engage emotion profoundly. Tales of gods and heroes convey grief, rage, desire, and ecstasy, dramatizing experiences that resonate across time. The grief of Inanna, descending into the underworld, mirrors human suffering and resilience. Greek tragedies, such as the stories of Agamemnon and Oedipus, evoke fear and pity, teaching audiences ethical and social lessons through catharsis. Emotional engagement in myth reinforced memory, morality, and social cohesion. The physiological responses, goosebumps, tears, adrenaline, linked narrative to lived experience. In Native American vision quests, encountering mythic figures invoked intense emotion, often catalyzing personal insight and community guidance. These stories emphasize that human life is inseparable from emotion. Myths dramatize ethical dilemmas, mortality, and social conflict, making abstract concepts tangible and memorable. Level 24, Ancestral Echoes, Connecting Past and Present. By now, myths function as bridges across generations. They encode ancestral knowledge, historical memory, and communal wisdom. In Norse sagas, encounters with forebears teach courage and warn against hubris. Egyptian funerary texts invoke ancestors' guidance to navigate the afterlife. In African and Aboriginal traditions, dreamtime narratives connect living people to creation ancestors, shaping identity and moral understanding. These stories reinforce cultural continuity, teaching critical thinking, reflection, and ethical responsibility through narrative. Ancestors in myth are not passive. They actively shape decision-making, morality, and societal norms. Myths thus anchor present behavior in past experience, creating a continuum where lessons, warnings, and inspiration are inseparable from collective memory. Level 25. Masks and Hidden Selves. Identity and Deception. Myths explore identity through disguise, duality, and hidden intentions. Venetian carnival masks and Greek theatrical masks find echoes in mythic narratives. Loki, the Norse trickster, shifts appearance and role, teaching unpredictability and adaptation. In African folklore, Anansi often masquerades to outwit stronger opponents, reflecting intelligence, strategy, and ethical flexibility. Myths suggest that humans, like gods and spirits, contain contradictions and secrets. Masks serve as metaphors for hidden desires, suppressed traits, and social strategy. By navigating these layers, audiences reflect on self-knowledge, morality, and psychological complexity. Masked narratives also emphasize caution. Deception can teach survival, cunning, and critical thinking, preparing humans for both social and existential challenges. Level 26, The Shifting Ground. Instability and Change. Chaos enters myth as physical and moral instability. The earth may shake, rivers flood, or skies darken, as in Mesopotamian accounts of natural disaster or Greek myths of storms sent by Poseidon. Mongol legends and Viking sagas describe traversing treacherous lands, reflecting both literal and metaphorical instability. These stories mirror human experience. Unpredictability, risk, and transformation are constants. Myths teach adaptation, resilience, and strategic thinking. navigating shifting terrain in narrative parallels, navigating societal, environmental, and personal upheaval. Characters who succeed model flexible morality, courage, and ingenuity. Audiences learn to anticipate consequences, confront fear, and interpret signs, blending psychological insight with practical guidance. Level 27, The Strange Guest, Visitors from Beyond. Mystical visitors appear in myth, messengers, spirits, or divine guides. In medieval Europe, dreams featuring strangers often predicted calamity or fortune. Greek oracles invoked strangers as intermediaries between humans and gods. Indigenous shamans describe encounters with spirits that challenge or guide Vision Quest participants. These figures embody untapped potential, hidden knowledge, or unresolved inner conflict. Recognizing and engaging with them is a metaphor for self-reflection, curiosity, and moral courage. Myths teach that knowledge often arrives unexpectedly, that wisdom requires humility and readiness, and that human perception must expand to encounter truth. The stranger symbolizes both threat and opportunity, danger and revelation, in narrative and psychological exploration. Level 28, The Labyrinth, Complexity of Mind and Fate. The labyrinth is a recurring motif, complex, confounding, and transformative. The Minoan labyrinth, housing the Minotaur, represents societal, psychological, and existential challenges. Myths use mazes to teach strategy, patience, and reflection. Characters navigating labyrinths, Theseus, Daedalus, or Vision Questers, symbolize human confrontation with memory, desire, and fate. Audiences learn that life's challenges require careful navigation, ethical decision-making, and resilience. The labyrinth metaphorically represents consciousness, layered, non-linear, and demanding active engagement. Myths embed these lessons in thrilling narrative, fostering critical thinking, courage, and insight. Level 29, The Forgotten Door, Curiosity and Courage. Hidden doors, secret chambers, and forbidden spaces appear across myths, inviting exploration. In European castles and Mesopotamian temples, doors concealed treasures, knowledge, or danger. In narrative, opening the door symbolizes confronting fear, curiosity, and moral choice. Myths teach that growth requires risk, intellectual, ethical, and physical. Encounters behind these doors reveal hidden truths, suppressed memory, or divine insight. The act of discovery is as transformative as the reward itself, emphasizing courage, ingenuity, and moral discernment. Through narrative, audiences internalize that facing the unknown is essential for personal and communal evolution. Level 30. Awakening, Within the Dream. Lucidity and insight. At the culmination of this mythic cycle, awareness emerges. Tibetan dream yoga, medieval European accounts, and indigenous vision quests describe lucid dreaming as a means of exploration, creativity, and self-realization. Myth becomes laboratory. The dreamer navigates landscapes, tests limits, confronts fears, and interprets divine messages. Modern research confirms REM sleep allows conscious engagement with dreams, linking ancient practice with science. Myths teach that consciousness is fluid, perception is subjective, and self-awareness transforms experience. By integrating imagination, morality, and reflection, audiences grasp the infinite potentials of human cognition, moral reasoning, and spiritual exploration. Level 31, The Rise of Heroes, Mortals Among Gods. Heroes emerge as mediators between humans and gods, embodying ideals, flaws, and daring. In Greek myth, Perseus slays Medusa, combining courage, cunning, and divine aid, reflecting humanity's pursuit of mastery over both physical and moral challenges. Gilgamesh, a semi-divine king, embarks on quests for immortality, illustrating human fear of death and desire for legacy. These narratives dramatize courage, resilience, and ethical dilemmas. Historical parallels abound. Alexander the Great's campaigns mirrored mythic heroism, blurring history and legend. Heroic myths function as psychological maps, showing audiences how courage, intelligence, and moral reflection navigate life's chaos. They are both aspirational and cautionary, emphasizing that heroism carries responsibility, ethical weight, and potential danger. Level 32, Forbidden Knowledge, Curiosity and Consequence. Humans are drawn to forbidden knowledge, a theme central to myth. Prometheus steals fire, gifting it to humanity, defying Zeus, and suffers eternal punishment. A narrative blending rebellion, innovation, and risk. The biblical tale of Adam and Eve in Eden illustrates curiosity's dual nature. Enlightenment paired with moral consequence. Ancient Egyptian scribes guarded secret knowledge of rituals and astronomy, suggesting awareness of both power and danger inherent in information. Myths dramatize the tension between curiosity and limitation, teaching that seeking understanding requires courage, foresight, and humility. They embed lessons on ethics, responsibility, and the dangers of hubris, offering timeless guidance for decision-making and reflection. Level 33, The Labyrinth of Fate, Destiny and Free Will. Myths explore the tension between destiny and agency. Oedipus' tragic fate reveals how foreknowledge and human action intertwine, raising critical questions about choice, morality, and inevitability. Norse norns weave the threads of life, determining past, present, and future, yet individuals act within constraints. Mesopotamian epics depict kings consulting oracles, balancing prophecy and strategy. These narratives encourage reflection on decision-making under uncertainty. Audiences learn that while fate frames possibilities, human intelligence, courage, and ethics shape outcomes. Myths at this level fuse psychology, morality, and existential philosophy, dramatizing life as a maze of choices, consequences, and moral responsibility. Level 34. Divine Conflict, Rivalry among the Gods. Myths often depict gods as flawed, rivalrous, and politically entangled. Greek mythology is rife with jealousies, Hera versus Zeus, Athena versus Poseidon, reflecting human-like political maneuvering projected onto the divine. Egyptian tales recount Seth murdering Osiris, introducing chaos that required cosmic restoration. These stories dramatize conflict, teaching humans about strategy, alliances, and ethical dilemmas. Divine conflict also explores moral ambiguity. Gods may punish, reward, or deceive, offering lessons in resilience, observation, and critical thinking. By projecting human experience onto immortal figures, myths allow safe exploration of power, envy, and ethics, engaging audiences emotionally and intellectually while embedding moral and psychological lessons. Level 35. Love and Tragedy, Passion Across Realms. Love in myth is powerful, transformative, and dangerous. Aphrodite and Adonis' story blends desire, jealousy, and mortality. In Mesopotamia, Inanna and Dumuzi's narrative mixes devotion with suffering, ritualized in festivals marking seasonal cycles. These tales dramatize passion's potency and peril, teaching audiences about emotional intensity, moral complexity, and societal expectations. Romantic myths often intersect with danger. Betrayal, jealousy, or hubris leads to disaster, providing cautionary guidance. By weaving love with risk, narrative, and historical reflection, myths engage deeply with human psychology, showing that emotion is both life-affirming and potentially destructive, requiring wisdom, courage, and self-awareness. Level 36. Mythical Journeys, Quest and Exploration. Myths frequently involve epic journeys, physical, psychological, and spiritual. The Odyssey chronicles Odysseus navigating perilous seas, monsters, and temptation, blending survival, wit, and moral choices. Gilgamesh's journey explores friendship, loss, and mortality, teaching profound lessons about human aspiration and acceptance. Polynesian myths recount long voyages across the Pacific, encoding navigation, ecology, and cultural memory. These narratives dramatize human ingenuity, resilience, and ethical decision-making under uncertainty. Journeys are metaphors for life. Each obstacle, ally, and discovery mirrors psychological growth, moral reasoning, and cultural identity. Myths encourage audiences to embrace challenge, reflect on purpose, and cultivate courage and resourcefulness. Level 37. Monsters and the Unknown. Fear as Teacher. Monsters embody both literal and metaphorical fears. Greek Gorgons, Scylla, and Charybdis threaten heroes, while Mesopotamian Tiamat embodies primordial chaos. Medieval European myths describe dragons, revenants, and demons, warning of moral, social, and natural dangers. Monsters symbolize danger, uncertainty, and ethical challenge. Facing them in myth teaches problem-solving, courage, and ethical reasoning. Psychological studies show that narrative exposure to controlled fear enhances learning, memory, and reflection. Myths exploit this. By dramatizing the unknown, myths prepare audiences to confront personal, social, and existential threats, reinforcing adaptability, critical thinking, and ethical vigilance. Level 38. Tricksters and Rebels. Chaos as Catalyst. Trickster figures, Loki, Anansi, Coyote, disrupt order, forcing adaptation and reflection. They challenge authority, subvert expectation, and highlight human ingenuity. Tricksters embody paradox. They are chaotic yet instructive, dangerous yet revealing. African Anansi tales often involve cleverness to survive social or ecological challenges. Norse Loki catalyzes change in mythic narrative. These characters teach that creativity, flexibility, and critical thinking are essential for navigating complex social and moral landscapes. Tricksters engage audiences intellectually and emotionally, blending humor, danger, and moral complexity to enhance reflection and retention. Level 39. Catastrophes and Cosmic Threats. Lessons from Destruction. Myths frequently depict disasters, floods, fires, plagues, or wars, dramatizing existential risk. The Mesopotamian epic of Atrahasis recounts a divine flood, paralleling historical environmental events, teaching survival and moral responsibility. Greek myths describe titanomachy and divine retribution, embedding lessons about hubris, ethical behavior, and social stability. Catastrophes dramatize danger, testing characters' resilience, ingenuity, and morality. Audiences internalize these lessons, learning strategic thinking, caution, and ethical discernment. Catastrophic myths blend awe, fear, and reflection, encoding survival knowledge and moral philosophy in emotionally compelling narratives. Level 40. Integration of myth, knowledge, morality, and identity. By this stage, myths converge, integrating knowledge, morality, and identity. Heroes, gods, monsters, tricksters, and disasters interweave to create complex, multi-layered narratives reflecting human experience. Greek epics, Mesopotamian chronicles, and Egyptian funerary texts combine survival knowledge, ethical instruction, and cultural memory. Myth functions as education, entertainment, and moral philosophy. Audiences engage with history, psychology, ethics, and cosmology simultaneously. At this level, myths reveal that human understanding emerges through narrative, reflection, and interaction with danger, morality, and curiosity. Myths become tools for navigating life. They teach observation, foresight, courage, and ethical reasoning while entertaining, shocking, and inspiring reflection. Level 41. Celestial Myths, Stars, Planets, and Cosmic Order. By this stage, myths extend beyond Earth, exploring the heavens. Mesopotamian civilizations observed celestial movements, linking planets to gods. Venus to Inanna, Jupiter to Marduk, Mars to Nergal. Myths explained eclipses, comets, and planetary alignments as divine messages, combining astronomy with moral and political guidance. Greek mythology cast Orion, Cassiopeia, and the Pleiades as immortalized narratives, ensuring cultural memory through the night sky. Celestial myths functioned as both practical tools and symbolic frameworks. They guided navigation, agriculture, and religious timing, while reflecting human curiosity, imagination, and desire to impose order on the cosmos. These narratives taught that understanding natural forces requires observation, reflection, and humility, blending science, philosophy, and spirituality in compelling story form. Level 42. The Cycle of Life. Birth, death, and rebirth. Ancient myths explore life's cyclical nature. Egyptian Osiris embodies death and resurrection, teaching moral order and cosmic stability. Hindu myths describe cycles of creation, preservation, and destruction, reflecting both ethical and cosmological principles. Greek myths dramatize the seasons and mortality through Demeter and Persephone, linking human experience with natural rhythm. These stories convey the inevitability of change, the consequences of action, and the hope for renewal. They encourage audiences to reflect on mortality, legacy, and moral responsibility, blending existential insight with practical understanding of environmental and societal cycles. Level 43. War and Strategy. Lessons from Mythic Battles. Conflict is central to human experience, and myths dramatize strategy, heroism, and moral dilemma. The Iliad recounts Greek heroism, honor, and tragedy, while Mesopotamian epics depict divine and human combat intertwined. Historical parallels appear in the campaigns of Alexander, Assyrian conquests, and Egyptian military expeditions, where myths informed tactics, morale, and leadership principles. Audiences learn critical thinking, strategy, and ethical reasoning through narrative. Battles teach courage, the cost of hubris, and the consequences of moral and tactical errors. Myth transforms warfare into a reflective tool, blending entertainment, moral philosophy, and historical memory. Level 44. Forbidden Realms, Underworld and the Unknown. The underworld represents both literal and psychological exploration. Egyptian Duat, Greek Hades, and Mesopotamian Kur depict realms where moral choices, courage, and knowledge determine fate. Myths describe perilous journeys to these domains. Heroes confront monsters, deception, and existential questions. The underworld teaches resilience, ethical discernment, and strategic thinking. It symbolizes the unknown, death, subconscious fear, and moral complexity, preparing audiences psychologically and morally for life's uncertainties. By dramatizing peril and reward, myths engage critical thinking, courage, and reflection, encoding both survival knowledge and existential insight. Level 45. Divine Punishment, Hubris and Retribution. Many myths explore the consequences of arrogance. Greek tales depict Icarus flying too close to the sun and Niobe punished for pride, illustrating human limitations and ethical responsibility. Mesopotamian narratives recount kings punished for injustice or impiety, blending morality, politics, and survival lessons. Punishment myths serve as cautionary tales. They dramatize the danger of overstepping natural, social, or divine boundaries. These narratives reinforce reflection, ethical reasoning, and strategic decision-making, while entertaining audiences through dramatic, often shocking consequences. Level 46. The Trickster's Wisdom, Chaos as Creative Force. Tricksters continue to play pivotal roles, blending humor, danger, and insight. Loki, Anansi, and Coyote challenge authority, disrupt order, and force reflection. Their antics teach adaptability, intelligence, and ethical nuance. Creativity often emerges through chaos. Trickster myths convey critical thinking and problem-solving lessons, showing that unconventional approaches can yield survival, moral, or social benefits. These narratives illustrate paradox. Danger and wisdom coexist. Humor conveys deep truths, and rule-breaking can foster growth. Level 47. Prophecy and Vision, Foreknowledge in Myth. Oracles, prophets, and seers offer insight into fate and consequence. The Pythia at Delphi, Mesopotamian diviners reading entrails, and Vedic seers predict, warn, and advise. Prophecy myths dramatize the tension between destiny and free will. Knowing the future influences choice, morality, and strategy. Audiences engage with uncertainty, ethical reflection, and decision-making, learning that insight requires interpretation, courage, and humility. These narratives provide suspense, moral complexity, and intellectual engagement, enhancing critical thinking and narrative retention. Level 48. Sacred Objects and Talismans, Power in Myth. Objects acquire symbolic, magical, and ethical significance. Excalibur, the Ark of the Covenant, and Mesopotamian sacred tablets convey divine authority, protection, or moral lessons. Such items often represent power, responsibility, or hidden knowledge. Myths dramatize human interaction with sacred objects. Courage, greed, or wisdom determine outcome. These narratives teach moral reasoning, risk assessment, and respect for forces beyond comprehension. Objects serve as focal points for reflection, memory, and cultural identity, embedding practical, spiritual, and ethical lessons in engaging storytelling. Level 49. Natural disasters and cosmic events. Lessons from catastrophe. Floods, earthquakes, storms, and celestial phenomena are dramatized in myths as divine communication, moral consequence, or existential threat. The Epic of Atrahasis, Greek flood stories, and Mesoamerican accounts depict both literal and symbolic disasters. Such narratives teach preparedness, moral behavior, and respect for natural forces. Audiences learn to anticipate danger, navigate uncertainty, and reflect on human limitations. Catastrophic myths combine shock, awe, and reflection, encoding survival, ethical, and philosophical lessons in emotionally compelling narratives. Level 50. Integration, synthesis of knowledge, morality, and identity. At this pivotal stage, myths converge. Heroes, gods, tricksters, disasters, and sacred objects interweave to form complex narratives reflecting human experience. Stories teach courage, wisdom, morality, and resilience, while engaging audiences in reflection, critical thinking, and ethical reasoning. Myths encode historical memory, survival knowledge, and psychological insight. They educate, entertain, and morally instruct simultaneously. By synthesizing prior themes, myths become tools for navigating life's complexity. They foster awareness of self, society, and the cosmos, offering lessons in courage, morality, curiosity, and imagination. Level 51. Myths of transformation, metamorphosis, and change. At this level, myths explore physical, spiritual, and moral transformation. Ovid's Metamorphoses recounts humans, gods, and creatures shifting forms, reflecting moral lessons and human psychology. Arachne becomes a spider for her hubris. Daphne transforms into a laurel tree to escape Apollo's pursuit. Egyptian myths describe Osiris's death and resurrection, emphasizing renewal, justice, and cosmic order. Transformation myths communicate impermanence and adaptability, showing that identity, circumstance, and morality are fluid. They teach audiences to embrace change, reflect on consequences, and understand that personal evolution requires both courage and wisdom. Historical parallels abound. Rulers adopting new cultural practices, societies transforming under conquest, or religious shifts reshaping ethics mirror these mythic lessons. Level 52. The Eternal Struggle, Good, Evil, and Moral Dilemmas. Myths dramatize the tension between moral polarities. Zoroastrian tales of Ahura Mazda versus Angra Mainyu depict the cosmic struggle between order and chaos, righteousness and malevolence. Greek myths present gods and mortals entangled in morally ambiguous decisions. Agamemnon sacrificing his daughter Iphigenia for victory highlights ethical conflict in survival and ambition. These narratives encourage reflection on ethics, strategy, and the consequences of action. Myths provide a safe space to explore moral tension, cultivating critical thinking and emotional intelligence while showing that human choices resonate far beyond immediate circumstances. Audiences confront danger, desire, and consequence, engaging deeply with ethical philosophy dramatized through storytelling. Level 53. Myths of justice, punishment, and reward. Ancient myths frequently codify justice, linking action to consequence. The Mesopotamian Code of Hammurabi, though legal, is mythically framed. The king acts as divine intermediary, enforcing cosmic and social order. Greek myths depict Nemesis punishing hubris, while Egyptian accounts illustrate Ma'at, balance, truth, and justice, as central to life and afterlife. Punishment myths are shocking. They illustrate risks of arrogance, deceit, or immorality, embedding ethical lessons in memorable narrative. Reward myths conversely depict divine favor for wisdom, courage, or piety, teaching reflection and aspiration. By dramatizing justice, myths reinforce critical thinking about personal action, societal norms, and cosmic order, cultivating moral discernment and strategic awareness in audiences. Level 54. Sacred Quests, Searching for Knowledge and Power. Heroes and mortals embark on quests, blending adventure, moral challenge, and wisdom acquisition. Gilgamesh seeks immortality, Odysseus navigates perilous seas, and the Argonauts pursue the Golden Fleece. In Egypt, priests undertook ritualized pilgrimages to connect with divine knowledge. These quests integrate courage, intelligence, and ethical reflection. Myths teach that pursuit itself is transformative. Obstacles test morality, perseverance, and creativity. Ancient historical events, such as Alexander's campaigns or Chinese imperial expeditions, mirror these narratives, blending real-world exploration with mythic symbolism. Audiences internalize lessons about ambition, risk, and reflection through dramatic storytelling. Level 55. Myths of Temptation, Desire, and Consequence. Temptation narratives highlight moral, ethical, and survival lessons. Eve's choice in Eden, the Greek tale of Circe luring Odysseus's crew, or Mesopotamian stories of human defiance illustrate the interplay of desire, consequence, and wisdom. These myths dramatize human susceptibility to allure, greed, or pride, providing lessons in foresight, restraint, and strategic action. They serve as psychological and social guidance, showing that navigating desire requires ethical reasoning, emotional intelligence, and courage. Audiences engage with danger, moral reflection, and self-awareness, enhancing critical thinking and internalizing cultural wisdom. Level 56. Mythic Alliances, Cooperation and Rivalry. Collaboration and conflict among characters teach social, strategic, and moral lessons. Greek heroes form alliances to face monsters or pursue quests, while rivalries often lead to betrayal, loss, or insight. Norse myths depict gods collaborating to prevent Ragnarok, highlighting teamwork, foresight, and courage under extreme risk. Ancient historical parallels include alliances and betrayals in Assyrian, Egyptian, or Chinese history. By dramatizing cooperation and rivalry, myths teach audiences about loyalty, strategy, negotiation, and consequence. These stories reflect real-world social dynamics while embedding ethical reasoning and critical reflection within engaging narrative. Level 57. Myths of Knowledge, Learning, and Wisdom. Knowledge is both coveted and dangerous in myth. Prometheus's theft of fire, Egyptian secret rituals, and Greek oracles illustrate the duality of wisdom. Power and responsibility coexist. Ancient scholars, priests, and rulers guarded knowledge, often codifying it in mythic form. Myths teach that insight requires courage, humility, and reflection. Misused knowledge can harm self and society. While applied wisely, it empowers and protects. Audiences confront danger, mystery, and ethical responsibility, learning through dramatic narrative about the consequences of curiosity and the virtues of discernment, patience, and foresight. Level 58. Cataclysmic Myths, Destruction and Renewal. Floods, plagues, fires, and divine wrath appear across cultures. Mesopotamian Atrahasis, Greek Deucalion, and Hindu Pralaya all dramatize catastrophic events. These narratives teach survival, ethical behavior, and respect for natural and moral forces. Catastrophic myths are emotionally intense, shocking audiences while embedding lessons about resilience, preparation, and ethical decision-making. Historical parallels include volcanic eruptions, famines, and societal collapse, illustrating myth as a repository of both survival knowledge and philosophical reflection. Audiences engage with existential danger, developing critical thinking, moral discernment, and adaptive imagination. Level 59. Transformation through Trial, Growth and Initiation. Mythic trials shape heroes and mortals, dramatizing personal evolution. Odysseus navigates monsters, Circe, and temptation. Sumerian Gilgamesh faces mortality and friendship. Egyptian initiates undergo ritual trials to gain knowledge and spiritual maturity. These narratives emphasize courage, reflection, and strategic thinking. Trials often involve moral, physical, and psychological challenges, teaching audiences about resilience, ethical reasoning, and self-knowledge. Historical initiation practices, shamanic rites, warrior training, priestly rituals, reflect mythic structures, blending education, psychology, and ethical instruction into compelling narrative. Level 60. Integration of lessons, wisdom, morality, and human experience. At this stage, myths synthesize prior themes. Transformation, justice, knowledge, catastrophe, and trial converge to form coherent, multi-layered narratives. Heroes, gods, tricksters, disasters, and sacred objects intertwine, reflecting the complexities of human experience. Myths teach courage, strategy, ethical reasoning, and resilience, while engaging audiences in reflection, emotion, and critical thinking. Cultural memory, survival knowledge, moral philosophy, and psychological insight are encoded in emotionally compelling, immersive stories. By integrating lessons, myths function as both entertainment and education. Audiences learn to navigate danger, desire, and morality while reflecting on identity, society, and the cosmos. Level 61. The myth of the eternal sea, oceans of danger and discovery. Oceans dominate myths as realms of both peril and knowledge. Polynesian navigators wove stories of distant islands, monstrous sea creatures, and ancestral spirits guiding voyages. In Greek myth, Poseidon ruled the seas, punishing hubris and rewarding courage. The Odyssey dramatizes the human struggle against unpredictable waters, from Scylla and Charybdis to storms and temptation. Mesopotamian myths describe the chaotic waters of Tiamat, embodying both creation and destruction. These narratives teach that the unknown demands respect, preparation, and critical thinking. Audiences engage with both fear and awe, learning the delicate balance between exploration and caution. Historically, maritime myths guided navigation, instilled moral lessons, and encoded ecological knowledge, merging adventure with ethical reflection. Level 62. Mountains and high places, sacred peaks and challenge. Mountains represent aspiration, danger, and spiritual insight. Olympus, the home of the Greek gods, embodies divine power and human aspiration. Mount Meru in Hindu mythology stands as the cosmic axis, linking heaven, earth, and the underworld. In Incan myth, sacred peaks host gods, ancestors, and spirits demanding ritual respect. Myths of ascent dramatize challenge. Climbing mountains tests courage, wisdom, and morality. Audiences internalize lessons about ambition, risk, perseverance, and ethical conduct. Mountains in myth are both physical and symbolic, obstacles to overcome, thresholds of transformation, and vantage points to perceive human experience and the cosmos. Level 63. Fire and light, knowledge, creation, and destruction. Fire symbolizes both innovation and danger. Prometheus's theft of fire epitomizes curiosity, rebellion, and consequence. In Vedic mythology, Agni carries ritual knowledge and divine power, while Greek myths depict volcanic eruptions as expressions of divine wrath. Fire myths dramatize the duality of human mastery. Harnessing power can illuminate, destroy, or morally transform. These narratives engage audiences in reflection, highlighting responsibility, foresight, and ethical reasoning. Fire myths encode survival knowledge, technical insight, and philosophical reflection, teaching courage, creativity, and prudence while dramatizing risk and consequence. Level 64. The labyrinthine mind, dreams, madness, and insight. Myth often externalizes mental complexity through symbolic architecture. Greek labyrinths, Native American vision quests, and Mesopotamian sacred spaces dramatize psychological trials, moral reflection, and personal discovery. Heroes navigate confusion, fear, and moral ambiguity. These narratives explore human cognition, memory, and emotion, dramatizing both danger and growth. Audiences engage with challenges, learning resilience, self-awareness, and ethical reasoning. Myths suggest that understanding the mind requires courage, reflection, and navigation of complex moral and psychological landscapes. Historically, labyrinths guided ritual, education, and philosophical reflection, blending narrative, psychology, and moral pedagogy. Level 65, the myth of the underworld, confronting mortality. The underworld symbolizes the ultimate journey of human experience. Greek Hades, Egyptian Duat, and Mesopotamian Kur depict moral consequence, transformation, and insight. Orpheus's descent to retrieve Eurydice dramatizes love, risk, and ethical decision-making. Underworld myths teach courage, foresight, and moral reasoning while confronting fear of death and unknown. Historical practices, funerary rituals, ancestor worship, and shamanic journeys mirror mythic narratives, encoding survival knowledge and ethical reflection. Audiences engage with existential danger, morality, and psychological insight, enhancing retention, reflection, and critical thinking. Level 66, Heroes Against Time, Mortality and Legacy. Myths confront the human desire for immortality and enduring legacy. Gilgamesh's quest dramatizes the tension between mortality and aspiration. Greek heroes seek kleos, enduring fame through deeds. Egyptian pharaohs built monumental tombs to secure memory across millennia. These narratives teach that courage, ethical conduct, and reflection shape lasting influence. They explore human ambition, mortality, and moral responsibility, showing that legacy is earned through wisdom, action, and resilience. Audiences reflect on personal purpose, societal contribution, and the moral weight of their choices, gaining insight into human motivation, aspiration, and ethical behavior. Level 67, Divine Mischief, Chaos as Creative and Destructive Force. Trickster and divine mischief challenge order, morality, and perception. Loki's schemes, Anansi's cunning, and Greek godly interventions dramatize chaos's dual role, danger and insight. Chaos myths emphasize adaptability, intelligence, and ethical discernment. Audiences experience tension and revelation. Narratives teach problem-solving, critical reflection, and resilience. Historical analogues, political intrigue, rebellion, and cultural upheaval echo mythic lessons, showing that disruption can provoke growth, reflection, and ethical engagement. Myths blend humor, danger, and wisdom to convey deep truths about human and divine behavior. Level 68, Cosmic Battles, Order, Chaos, and Moral Reflection. Mythic wars between gods and titans, light and darkness, or celestial forces dramatize universal principles. Greek Titanomachy, Norse Ragnarok, and Mesopotamian cosmic battles illustrate ethical, social, and existential stakes. These narratives engage audiences in critical thinking about morality, strategy, and consequence. Battles dramatize courage, hubris, and wisdom, teaching reflection on personal and societal decision-making. Cosmic conflict myths encode knowledge about human behavior, societal order, and existential risk, blending history, philosophy, and psychology in compelling narrative form. Level 69. Sacred Rituals, Myth, Society, and Power. Rituals transform myth into lived experience. Egyptian temple ceremonies, Greek Dionysian rites, and Mesopotamian offerings dramatize connection between humans and gods. Ritual myths teach moral behavior, social cohesion, and respect for forces beyond comprehension. They encode historical memory, ecological awareness, and ethical instruction. Audiences learn through narrative immersion. Observing or imagining rituals teaches reflection, ethical reasoning, and cultural awareness. Mythic ritual reinforces societal values, psychological insight, and moral education while maintaining engagement through drama, danger, and spectacle. Level 70, Integration, Knowledge, Morality, and Human Experience. By level 70, myths consolidate prior themes: transformation, morality, danger, chaos, heroism, and cosmic order converge. Heroes, gods, tricksters, disasters, and sacred objects intertwine to create multi-layered, immersive narratives. Myths teach courage, reflection, ethical reasoning, and resilience while engaging audiences in critical thinking and psychological insight. Historical context enriches understanding. Mesopotamian, Egyptian, Greek, Norse, and Polynesian narratives reflect survival knowledge, moral philosophy, and cultural memory. These stories serve as both entertainment and moral pedagogy, providing guidance on navigating personal, social, and cosmic challenges. Myth becomes a tool for reflection, strategy, and ethical discernment, embedding deep lessons in immersive, emotionally compelling storytelling. Level 71. The Labyrinth of Fate. Choices and Consequences. By level 71, myths delve deeply into the complex web of fate. Greek narratives depict characters trapped in labyrinths, both literal and symbolic, where each choice ripples into unforeseen outcomes. The myth of Theseus navigating the labyrinth of Crete to slay the Minotaur illustrates strategic thinking, courage, and moral deliberation. The labyrinth is more than architecture. It represents human decision-making, the consequences of hubris, and the interplay between divine design and personal agency. Mesopotamian myths describe kings consulting oracles to navigate political and cosmic labyrinths, emphasizing that insight, caution, and wisdom are crucial when confronting the unknown. Audiences are engaged in the suspense of choice, the tension of risk, and the moral reflection each decision invokes. Level 72. The Veil Between Worlds, Spirits, and Ancestors. Ancient myths portray a thin veil between the living and the dead. Egyptian ancestors guided the living through dreams, inscriptions, and rituals. Japanese Shinto narratives recount kami influencing human affairs, and Norse mythology describes spirits inhabiting sacred groves. Heroes often receive guidance, warnings, or challenges from ancestors or otherworldly figures, emphasizing moral responsibility and the consequences of action. These narratives teach reverence, reflection, and strategic foresight. Historical societies embedded ancestor worship, ritual offerings, and sacred storytelling into culture to encode survival knowledge, social cohesion, and moral lessons. Audiences experience tension, awe, and reflection, learning the psychological and ethical dimensions of human connection across time and space. Level 73. Forbidden Knowledge, Curiosity, and Danger. The pursuit of knowledge is a recurrent theme, often fraught with risk. Prometheus's theft of fire, Pandora's box, and the tale of Gilgamesh seeking immortality illustrate the danger of curiosity untempered by wisdom. These myths dramatize moral, intellectual, and practical consequences. Knowledge empowers, but also threatens. Ancient Egyptian and Mesopotamian priests guarded sacred texts, blending secrecy, ritual, and myth to protect dangerous knowledge. Audiences learn critical thinking. Curiosity must be balanced with ethical reasoning and reflection. Such narratives thrill through danger while teaching philosophical and practical lessons about human ambition, foresight, and responsibility. Level 74. Myths of Love and Sacrifice. Love in myth is transformative, dangerous, and ethically complex. Greek myths recount Orpheus descending to Hades to reclaim Eurydice, demonstrating devotion, risk, and the moral weight of choice. Egyptian tales of Isis and Osiris depict love entwined with loss, loyalty, and cosmic balance. The Epic of Gilgamesh explores friendship, intimacy, and the limits of mortality. Love myths dramatize vulnerability, courage, and sacrifice, teaching audiences about the consequences of attachment, ethical choices, and the intertwining of personal and societal responsibilities. These narratives embed emotional intelligence, moral reasoning, and human psychology into compelling story arcs. Level 75. The Monster Within. Shadow and Self. Monsters often personify human fears, desires, and moral conflict. Greek Hydra and Typhon, Mesopotamian demons, and Celtic banshees externalize internal struggles. Heroes confront both literal and symbolic beasts, representing unresolved impulses, guilt, or societal danger. Jungian interpretation later frames these as archetypes, shadow aspects of the psyche. Historical warriors, shamans, and rulers used ritualized encounters with monsters to teach courage, moral reflection, and strategic thinking. Audiences are immersed in both suspense and ethical reflection, learning that the most dangerous monsters may exist within, demanding insight, courage, and self-awareness. Level 76, The Journey of the Hero, Trials and Triumphs. The hero's journey crystallizes moral, psychological, and social learning. Odysseus, Perseus, and Gilgamesh exemplify challenges, temptation, and triumph. Heroes navigate trials testing courage, intelligence, and ethical reasoning, often guided by mentors, divine intervention, or inner wisdom. These narratives dramatize risk, reward, and consequence, embedding lessons in decision-making, resilience, and morality. Historical parallels appear in legendary conquests, political ascension, and religious initiation, where trial and reflection shape societal roles and personal identity. Audiences engage with suspense, ethical tension, and the thrill of overcoming obstacles, internalizing lessons through compelling story arcs. Level 77, Cosmic Order, Balancing Chaos and Stability. Myths explore the interplay between chaos and order, illustrating societal, ethical, and personal lessons. Norse myths depict the constant tension between gods and chaotic forces, leading to Ragnarok, while Hindu myths describe cycles of creation, preservation, and destruction. Mesopotamian myths dramatize cosmic struggle as metaphor for governance, justice, and morality. Audiences learn reflection, foresight, and ethical reasoning, seeing human action as part of a larger pattern of balance. Historical civilizations used myth to codify social norms, political order, and cosmic awareness, embedding strategy, morality, and survival knowledge into narratives. Level 78, Myths of Fate and Free Will. The tension between destiny and autonomy permeates myth. Greek narratives of Oedipus, the Moirai, fates, and Norse prophecies highlight the complexity of choice within predetermined outcomes. Ancient societies debated the degree of divine control versus human agency, embedding philosophical inquiry in mythic narrative. Audiences reflect on moral responsibility, strategic action, and consequences, confronting the existential question, how much control do we truly have? Myths teach critical reasoning, ethical reflection, and risk assessment while dramatizing suspense, shock, and psychological tension. Level 79, Sacred Landscapes, Myth, Nature, and Human Experience. Myths often anchor human experience in physical landscapes. Mesopotamian rivers, Egyptian deserts, Greek mountains, and Polynesian islands serve as settings for moral, spiritual, and existential lessons. Heroes' journeys through these landscapes dramatize courage, decision-making, and ethical reflection. Sacred geography merges natural observation, societal knowledge, and spiritual symbolism. Audiences learn navigation of both literal and metaphorical terrains, reflecting on human adaptation, moral responsibility, and environmental awareness. Historical rituals, pilgrimage, and settlement patterns echo these narratives, blending practical and symbolic knowledge. Level 80, Synthesis, Wisdom, Danger, and Human Transformation. At level 80, myths integrate all prior lessons: heroism, morality, curiosity, love, chaos, fate, and the sacred converge. Narratives synthesize knowledge, experience, and ethical reflection, dramatizing transformation and personal growth. Heroes confront monsters, navigate cosmic conflict, face ethical dilemmas, and journey through sacred landscapes, providing audiences with immersive lessons in courage, reflection, and wisdom. Historical context: Mesopotamian, Egyptian, Greek, Norse, Polynesian, enriches understanding, demonstrating how myths encode survival knowledge, morality, and cultural identity. Level 80 myths emphasize integration. Understanding self, society, and cosmos requires courage, insight, and ethical awareness, dramatized through deeply engaging story arcs. Level 81, The Shadow of the Gods, Divine Intervention and Human Fragility. At level 81, myths highlight the constant tension between human agency and divine influence. Greek myths like the Iliad depict gods altering battles, punishing hubris, or rewarding courage, while Egyptian stories describe pharaohs guided by gods who demanded strict adherence to Ma'at, the principle of cosmic balance. In Mesopotamia, kings consulted omens and celestial signs to align decisions with divine will, dramatizing human fragility in the face of higher powers. Audiences witness the paradox of agency. While humans act and make choices, unseen forces shape outcomes, forcing reflection on responsibility, strategy, and morality. The interplay between the mortal and divine creates tension, drama, and suspense, reinforcing lessons about humility, foresight, and ethical reasoning. Historically, divine intervention myths served as tools for rulers to legitimize power, guide societal behavior, and instill moral order, blending narrative, philosophy, and practical governance. Level 82. Myths of Forbidden Realms, Crossing Thresholds of Danger. Exploration of forbidden spaces, caves, underworlds, hidden temples, symbolizes human curiosity, risk, and the pursuit of knowledge. Odysseus enters the underworld, Egyptian initiates descend into subterranean tombs, and Norse myths depict descents into Helheim. Crossing these thresholds dramatizes danger, moral testing, and ethical reflection. Myths encode lessons about preparedness, courage, and reflection in the face of the unknown. Historical parallels include explorers charting unclaimed lands, shamans undertaking spiritual journeys, and initiates undergoing rites of passage. Audiences experience suspense, moral tension, and cognitive engagement, internalizing lessons about caution, curiosity, and resilience while reflecting on personal and societal consequences. Level 83. Temptation and the Fall. Desire, hubris, and consequence. Myths explore the human susceptibility to desire and hubris. Adam and Eve's consumption of the forbidden fruit, Pandora opening the box, and Greek tales of mortals challenging gods dramatize the consequences of unrestrained action. Temptation myths combine psychological insight, moral tension, and storytelling suspense, highlighting risk, foresight, and ethical reflection. Ancient societies codified these lessons through narrative, ritual, and law, emphasizing foresight, restraint, and social cohesion. Audiences learn the dangers of unchecked ambition, desire, and pride while engaging with suspenseful, shocking, and morally complex narratives, enhancing reflection, empathy, and critical thinking. Level 84. Myths of Transformation. Death, rebirth, and renewal. Transformation is central to mythic storytelling. Osiris's resurrection in Egyptian tradition symbolizes continuity, justice, and cosmic order. Ovid's Metamorphoses depicts humans and gods changing forms, reflecting ethical, moral, and psychological lessons. Norse tales describe cycles of destruction and rebirth, preparing societies for change and mortality. Transformation myths engage audiences in contemplation about impermanence, personal growth, and ethical conduct. Historically, rites of passage, initiations, and ritual dramatizations reinforced societal norms and philosophical lessons, teaching courage, adaptability, and self-reflection. These stories provide suspense, moral tension, and profound insight into the human condition. Level 85. The Trickster's Path. Humor, chaos, and wisdom. Tricksters challenge order, provoke thought, and reveal hidden truths. Loki in Norse mythology, Anansi in African tales, and Coyote in Native American stories create chaos, mischief, and ethical dilemmas. Trickster myths highlight adaptability, intelligence, and reflection, demonstrating that disruption can illuminate morality and reveal social truths. Audiences engage in suspense, surprise, and moral reasoning, observing how cleverness and ethical choice interact. Historical analogues include political subversion, social rebellion, and creative disruption, showing that controlled chaos can teach strategy, reflection, and ethical discernment. Trickster narratives entertain while embedding deep philosophical lessons about morality, risk, and human ingenuity. Level 86. Cosmic Conflict. Chaos, Order, and Moral Insight. Cosmic battles dramatize the tension between order and chaos. The Titanomachy in Greek myth, Ragnarok in Norse myth, and Mesopotamian battles against primordial chaos illustrate ethical, social, and existential stakes. Heroes, gods, and mortals are tested, reflecting the consequences of action, hubris, and ethical reflection. Audiences engage with suspense, risk, and moral tension, internalizing lessons about strategy, courage, and societal responsibility. Historical parallels include warfare, political upheaval, and social reform, demonstrating how myth encodes philosophical, strategic, and ethical knowledge. These narratives provide both dramatic engagement and critical reflection for audiences. Level 87, Mythic Alliances, Cooperation, Rivalry, and Ethical Tension. Alliances and rivalries dramatize human and divine interaction. Greek heroes form coalitions to defeat monsters or pursue quests. Norse gods collaborate to delay Ragnarok, while rivalries create moral dilemmas, risk, and reflection. Historical parallels include treaties, dynastic marriages, and political alliances, embedding strategy, ethical reasoning, and risk assessment into narrative form. Audiences learn the value of loyalty, foresight, and ethical judgment through engaging, suspenseful stories. Myths teach cooperation and rivalry as essential forces in shaping society, identity, and human experience, blending drama with philosophical reflection. Level 88, Sacred Knowledge, Wisdom, Danger, and Responsibility. Wisdom in myth is powerful yet perilous. Prometheus's fire, Egyptian priestly rituals, and Greek oracular insights dramatize the duality of knowledge. It can empower or destroy. Myths illustrate that ethical responsibility and reflection are inseparable from the pursuit of knowledge. Historical guardians of wisdom, priests, scholars, and sages, used myth to convey consequences, strategy, and morality. Audiences learn critical thinking, foresight, and ethical reasoning while engaging with suspenseful and shocking narratives. Knowledge myths blend historical, ethical, and psychological lessons into compelling, immersive storytelling. Level 89, Catastrophe and Renewal, Lessons from Destruction. Floods, fires, plagues, and divine wrath dominate mythic narratives. Atrahasis, Deucalion, and Hindu pralaya dramatize destruction and renewal, teaching resilience, preparation, and ethical conduct. Audiences confront existential danger, moral reflection, and the consequences of hubris or negligence. Historical parallels include natural disasters, societal collapse, and pandemic events, reflecting myth's role as survival guide, moral educator, and narrative engagement tool. Catastrophe myths provide suspense, shock, and ethical insight, emphasizing adaptation, reflection, and moral reasoning. Level 90, Integration, Mastery of Myth, Morality, and Human Experience. Level 90 synthesizes the full range of mythic themes: transformation, moral tension, cosmic order, chaos, heroism, divine interaction, catastrophe, and knowledge converge into unified narratives. Audiences engage with stories that teach courage, reflection, ethical reasoning, psychological insight, and strategic thinking. Historical, cultural, and philosophical contexts, Mesopotamian, Egyptian, Greek, Norse, Polynesian, enhance understanding, demonstrating how myth encodes survival knowledge, morality, and societal identity. This level emphasizes holistic comprehension. Human experience is multidimensional, and myths provide immersive, ethical, and intellectual guidance. By interacting with these narratives, audiences cultivate reflection, critical thinking, resilience, and insight into personal and societal dynamics, making myth both entertainment and moral pedagogy. Level 91, The Final Hero, Legacy, Wisdom, and Mortality. By level 91, myths focus on the culmination of human experience, the hero facing the ultimate challenge and reflecting on mortality. Odysseus's final return to Ithaca, King Gilgamesh's journey toward understanding the limits of life, and Egyptian pharaohs confronting death in preparation for the afterlife exemplify this theme. These narratives dramatize courage, resilience, and the wisdom gained from experience, emphasizing the interplay of action, consequence, and reflection. Historical figures often embodied these mythic archetypes. integrating societal leadership with personal morality. Audiences engage deeply as suspense, danger, and philosophical insight converge, prompting contemplation of legacy, mortality, and the ethical dimension of human action. Level 92, the threshold of infinity, exploring the unknown. Myths push humanity toward the edges of the known world, both physically and metaphysically. Polynesian navigators' oceanic expeditions, Norse explorations of unknown lands, and Greek tales of heroes entering uncharted territories dramatize curiosity, risk, and discovery. These myths teach the importance of preparation, ethical decision-making, and courage in the face of uncertainty. Historical parallels abound, explorers charting continents, astronomers observing the cosmos, and philosophers probing abstract thought all reflect humanity's pursuit of the infinite. Audiences internalize lessons about risk, foresight, and reflection, engaging critically with the tension between ambition and prudence. Level 93, the dance of chaos and order. Cosmic equilibrium is central to late-stage myth. Ragnarok, the Greek Titanomachy, and Hindu cycles of creation and destruction illustrate the perpetual tension between order and chaos. Human behavior mirrors this cosmic struggle. Ambition, hubris, and ethical reflection determine outcomes. Historical societies encoded these lessons through law, ritual, and storytelling, teaching strategic thinking, morality, and resilience. Audiences are drawn into suspenseful narratives where consequences are amplified, learning through immersive, ethical, and psychological engagement. Myths dramatize that life, society, and morality are dynamic, requiring constant reflection, adaptation, and foresight. Level 94, the shadow self. Confronting inner darkness. Advanced mythic narratives externalize internal struggle through symbolic monsters, moral dilemmas, and personal failings. Greek Heracles confronting the Hydra, Norse heroes facing their shadow, and African trickster tales illustrate psychological complexity and ethical challenge. Audiences engage with suspense, danger, and moral reflection, learning courage, insight, and resilience. Historically, ritualized confrontation with fear and shadow, through initiation, storytelling, or combat training, served both educational and ethical purposes. These myths reinforce self-awareness, critical thinking, and ethical discernment, dramatizing the peril and reward inherent in facing one's inner darkness. Level 95. The power of knowledge and the perils of hubris. Knowledge myths teach both empowerment and danger. Prometheus, sacred Egyptian texts, and Greek oracles highlight the duality of intellectual pursuit. Wisdom must be tempered by ethical reasoning. Historical societies regulated knowledge through ritual, hierarchy, and moral instruction, reflecting the real-world consequences of misuse or misinterpretation. Audiences learn that curiosity, intelligence, and foresight are powerful but ethically charged forces. Myths dramatize shock, risk, and moral tension, embedding lessons on strategy, reflection, and responsibility into immersive narrative arcs. Level 96, the eternal cycle, death, rebirth, and transformation. Transformation and the cyclical nature of existence dominate advanced myth. Egyptian Osiris, Hindu reincarnation concepts, and Greek stories of metamorphosis illustrate continuity, moral balance, and renewal. Audiences confront mortality, impermanence, and ethical reflection while engaging in suspenseful, emotionally compelling storytelling. Historical rituals, initiations, and rites of passage mirrored these mythic lessons, teaching resilience, adaptation, and philosophical reflection. The narrative tension between destruction and renewal highlights the human need to balance courage, foresight, and ethical behavior in personal and societal life. Level 97, divine justice, retribution, reward, and ethical order. Late-stage myths emphasize moral consequence, divine, societal, and cosmic justice. Hammurabi's codified laws echo Mesopotamian moral storytelling. Greek gods reward or punish mortals. Egyptian Ma'at dictates cosmic order. Heroes' actions, hubris, and choices carry amplified consequences, teaching audiences about fairness, ethics, and strategic foresight. These narratives dramatize danger, suspense, and reflection, embedding philosophical and psychological insight in a compelling story. Historical parallels, law, governance, and societal norms reflect myths' enduring role in ethical education, civic cohesion, and moral reflection. Level 98, the convergence of time, history, memory, and myth. Myths unify past, present, and imagined futures. Greek epics preserve historical memory, Polynesian chants encode exploration, and Norse sagas maintain ancestral wisdom. Audiences experience temporal depth, suspense, and moral insight, understanding human experience as a continuum shaped by action, choice, and reflection. Historical societies used myth to transmit survival knowledge, ethics, and cultural identity. By level 98, narratives highlight continuity, consequence, and the interwoven nature of human endeavor and ethical responsibility, offering profound lessons on reflection, strategy, and personal growth. Level 99, the cosmic perspective, humanity within the universe. Myths expand awareness beyond the human and societal into the cosmic. Egyptian sun journeys, Norse Yggdrasil, and Greek celestial myths illustrate humanity's place in the universe. Audiences engage with awe, existential reflection, and ethical contemplation. Heroes, gods, and mortals interact with cosmic forces, emphasizing humility, foresight, and moral reasoning. Historical cosmologies and mythic storytelling guided navigation, astronomy, ritual, and philosophy. This level teaches perspective. Understanding life, society, and morality requires reflection on the vast, interconnected cosmos. Level 100, integration and mastery, wisdom, myth, and human experience. The final level synthesizes all prior themes: heroism, morality, chaos, order, transformation, knowledge, cosmic awareness, and ethical reflection converge. Myths become fully immersive guides to human experience, embedding lessons on courage, foresight, critical thinking, and ethical conduct. Historical context: Mesopotamian, Egyptian, Greek, Norse, Polynesian, illustrates how myths preserve survival knowledge, cultural memory, and moral pedagogy. Audiences internalize lessons on personal growth, societal responsibility, and existential reflection. Level 100 demonstrates that mastery of myth is mastery of human experience. Understanding self, society, and cosmos through story, reflection, and ethical engagement. The narrative is both educational and immersive, ensuring engagement, retention, and deep insight.